All right.
Okay, so for my presentation, I'm doing scaling startups and security awareness. Obviously, a lot of SaaS product startups in the Bay Area, and there's a lot of focus on customer acquisition, and the model that startups generally follow is very succinct. So there's a burn rate with the cash is seeded up front, and that is inversely proportionate to the customer acquisition. So they have a certain timeline in order to acquire the number of users and technology adoption for that market space that they're trying to sell into. During that period of time, they need to also be very conscientious about the security and what kind of risk appetite they're going to entertain in order to ensure that the data of the customer data that they acquire is clean and stored in sanctioned systems. Here, just looking at the burn rate is going down. I'll do it over here, it makes a little more sense. The burn rate is here inversely proportionate to the amount of acquisition and the subscription model revenue that's being brought in from customer adoption. So as companies scale and bring on the employees, they need to be more security focused and from the outset have more of a long-term vision for what security looks like for those controls and how that data is properly secured. If the company ultimately ends up losing the data and is hacked, that data will then, they'll lose the reputation and the product will not be adopted and they won't acquire the necessary following customer base that they're ultimately seeking. So in order to do that, IT is usually the first player in the security space that will start enforcing controls, both from a business operations standpoint and IT controls. And it's upon that individual, that incumbent, to create the initial policies surrounding that. So that needs to be on hardening the systems, on the security awareness across the entire culture. And if that is not the way that the company goes, and if they decide to outsource it to a managed service provider, they need, which is usually more problematic because the company is changing its vision so quickly, they need to have a very close relationship in order to do so. Obviously, a startup needs to be conscientious of the framework which they choose because certain domains are going to require different frameworks be in place. So if it's digital health, for example, HIPAA or HITRUST should be the government framework, should be the framework that they go after, whereas a governmental agency would be seeking NIST. But also in that space, they need to be aware of the technologies that they're implementing and using for cloud-based applications to ensure that they are also compliant within the framework to not waste budgets in that space. Okay. Securing a startup, other initiatives that could be taken from a more global outlook from day one would be looking at open source technologies and then moving away from them as the company obtains further budget and further revenue before they go to more sustained SecOps focus. So scaling security, under 10 employees, looking at two-factor authentication, looking at secured base cloud storage and applications that are compliant with the framework that the company wants to ultimately sell into would be ideal. And then up to 20 employees, the risk management and security framework should be handed off to one individual, usually somebody that understands both the business side of the business side of the company as well as the technology side, so that way they understand infrastructure controls and how that code is being managed. And then the first time security hire should be looked at around 30 to 70 and then start to fully robustly build out that program thereafter.
All right. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right, good. And, good. So, all right. So Ignacio said he was ready. Let me unmute him. And why don't you stop that share, Kevin? Then we can give it to Ignacio. Okay. So Ignacio, you should be able to share your desktop.
Sam,
yeah.
Mine's in when we come back the week after. I'll do mine's in 2 weeks from now.
If you want to, all right. You might lose some points for that.
That's fine.
Okay. All right. Good. Fair enough. Then Ignacio, I think, will be the last one. Is Ignacio there? He's ready. Okay.
Hi, Sam. Can you hear me?
I hear a voice. Good. Yeah. Why don't you share your desktop if you have any slides?
Okay.
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 Go ahead.
Okay, so I'm doing Equifax, which is an unresolved breach. To this point, we don't know where any of the data went. It basically just vanished. And there have actually been several people trying to find out where it's gone, and we still don't know. So the WHO, obviously, Equifax is one of the 3 credit reporting agencies. It's headquartered in Atlanta, Georgia, but it operates in over 24 countries. It has a yearly revenue of about $3.4 billion. The breach happened in 2017, and as you can see, the revenue was still greater in 2018. That means that in spite of this, you know, it's still a monster in terms of its size, and the government didn't seem to do much about it aside from slap a few fees on it and say, you know, get your act together. So what do credit reporting agencies do? They gather information from banks, social security numbers, addresses, credit accounts, et cetera, et cetera. And this is to report on the credit worthiness of individuals. So for example, if person X wants to take out a loan, they go to Equifax or one of the other reporting agencies and they say, is this person reputable and is it okay to loan them this much amount of money? The what? So 148 million people had their personal data stolen, of which 145.5 million had their social security numbers stolen. So that's really, really bad. So whoever got their hands on that information basically has everything they need to know about all of these people. Residents of the UK and Canada were also affected in the breach. And when it happened, the CIO was actually accused and convicted of insider trading. That means he was selling shares prior to them announcing that the data breach had occurred. And at least one other person from Equifax was convicted as well. So the FTC also alleged that Equifax stored network credentials and passwords, social security numbers, and other sensitive consumer information in plain text. This means that whoever got the data didn't have to unencrypt it, didn't have to spend any time whatsoever unencrypted it. They basically got it, and it's all in their hands now. So the estimated time of the breach was in mid-June to July 2017. When Equifax announced the data breach, it was September 7th, and the stock was at $136 per share. So lawsuits ensued. Obviously, everybody started freaking out, and by December, the stock had dropped to $90. But it started to recover. And I mean, at the time, with a total of 121 million shares, that would have been a loss of $5.5 billion. So obviously that is a huge impact on the company. However, you know, it's like everybody forgot about it. And now the stock price is at $144 a share, and it's very close to all-time highs. The house. There are 2 theories of how it happened. One theory is that a hacker or a group of hackers gained access to the servers, and they are currently sitting on the data because it is too hot, meaning that they don't want to go out there and sell the data because they're afraid that somebody will come after them. Another theory, which the intelligence agencies seem to have, is that a mid to low-level hacker gained access to the servers and couldn't get far enough to actually get any valuable data. So he made a deal in the dark web, and you know, he put the information out there. He says, "Hey, I got into the Equifax servers. You know, I'm not advanced enough. Can we make a deal? You know, with somebody who is?" And the intelligence agencies believe that he might have been contacted by a foreign agency, such as Russia or China, and they basically made a deal with him, and they were able to penetrate further into their servers. and exfiltrate all the data. And they believe they did this because the data can be used for determining potential spies. And the way they believe this can be done is that they can identify people in power who might have a tough financial situation, or who they believe if they can offer a certain pay or a certain bribe, that they could get them to send them any amount of data that they need.
All right. Well,
From a
that's
specific
the
person.
end of the time, so we better stop it there. Thank you.
Okay.
All right. And I think that's it for tonight. I'm going to stop